Who gon' take it there? 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 Electricity, 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 electricity. You know what's in the air. 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 It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility. It's possibility.
Alright, so Mr. Beast has revealed that he is going to be doing a Mr. Beast theme park in Saudi Arabia. This is on the part of Saudi Arabia, part of the same project that they've been trying to do to build out their sort of global cultural appeal, to try to bring in tourism, stimulate their economy, as well as move away from being an economy that's solely dependent on their oil exports. So they're trying to diversify, they're trying to present themselves as more liberal. And this was recently a major controversy when it came to a bunch of comedians who had accepted offers to do comedy shows for this big festival that they were having, which is directly funded by the Saudi government. That turned into a much more controversial thing than I think any of those comedians expected. It was a thing that people are still talking about and were talking about for weeks because, you know, these are guys that talk about free speech and speaking truth to power, but all of them were willing to take money directly from the royal family of Saudi Arabia. And so that is how this entire project to build out their cultural exports is being funded, is through the royal family, directly top-down government style. And the purpose of that is to reestablish Saudi Arabia on the world stage, not only as a powerhouse of cultural exports or place to go for a great time, but also to sort of whitewash the legacy of human rights abuses, jailing and murdering of journalists, etc., some of which has taken place recently. And to try to move on from some of those things and legitimize themselves as a state without really putting behind any of those archaic practices. So that's why these comedians that did the Riyadh Comedy Festival were asked by organizations like Human Rights Watch to say something while they were there about the jailing and murdering of journalists and human rights abuses of Saudi Arabia. That would have been the way to use that platform responsibly. So now, as part of a separate show, but similar project, which is a part of this festival Riyadh season, which, like I said, is a part of the larger Vision 2030. So Mr. Beast basically has a deal to do a temporary theme park in Saudi Arabia, which ties his brand in with the brand of this project that they're doing. When asked why, he said because he has fans all over the world, and the Middle East, or Saudi Arabia, is the middle of the world and would allow a lot of people to come. That's obviously bullshit. He did it for money. He did it because they are throwing money at these different content creators, comedians, and entertainers of all kinds to get them to participate in these festivals that they're doing, and probably ultimately get them to participate in creative projects that are being created inside Saudi Arabia as a way to legitimize them in the entertainment space, but also present more images of them that are favorable, which I'll get to a little bit later. So Mr. Beast is an obvious contender to do something like this. He creates these huge projects all over the world. He does have an enormous audience all over the world. He's got like 445 million subscribers on YouTube right now, which is insane. And he consistently is willing to throw exorbitant amounts of money at certain projects, seemingly just for the spectacle, just for the exploit, just to get it on camera, and then move on to the next thing. He's perfectly comfortable operating like that, and he has created this model where a lot of the money that he gets through these YouTube channels, and a lot of the money that he is putting into these actual videos, is going either towards various causes, random people supposedly doing things like building, reforestation, cleaning up trash in the ocean, etc. I mean, he has charitable organizations that are putting money directly towards these things, and a lot of that money is money that comes from YouTube channels, his own and one that he set up specifically for these charitable causes. So the bigger these projects that he does, and the more egregiously successful they are, then in his view, not only is that more wealth that he's amassing, but it is more money that he can put towards various charitable causes. And the story goes with him that the first brand deal he got like $10,000 for it, and he immediately gave it away to somebody. I think he made a video about it, probably. And ever since then, he was more obsessed with the idea of like finding ways to intertwine this YouTube entertainment with giving away money to people. Obviously, his major concern has always been YouTube, optimizing his YouTube videos and creating the most addictive possible YouTube content to grow tremendously and be the biggest YouTuber. He seems to have a singular obsession with the platform of YouTube, and I mean, it has been fruitful. He's the leading content creator on there and is essentially a part of YouTube's brand at this point, just in his sheer size. And there's a prominent ethical question, a debate that is had about the nature of this type of giving that he does, because on one hand, he is constantly generating money that goes towards these causes, which is a very important aspect of funding causes like that, which I'll again get to later. But also, he's displaying himself giving this money away, and often the videos themselves are kind of documentations, in many cases extremely tasteless and shallow documentations of, doing something like restoring somebody's eyesight. Or here's a video. This is just his most recent video. This will give you a pretty clear idea of what I'm talking about. This is just the first few seconds of his most recent video called "I Saved 1,000 Animals from Dying."
Sadly, this lion, if left untreated, would literally die. And it's the first of 1,000 animals we're gonna be saving in this video. Here's how.
Yeah, so that is perfect example. I mean, he does in fact help that animal in this video. It needs some surgery on a tooth. It gets the surgery. It shows you the surgery in the video. Quite fascinating to watch. But also, think about what does it require to get a shot like that? Because you have to have the animal already sick and waiting to receive this surgery. He says it's like it's going to die, and you have to stop to do this shot. Just like, hey, this is look at the. I mean, that's the whole Mr. Beast model right there. He is doing these charitable things. That's what the concepts of these videos seem to orbit around. But he's doing it in this utterly shameless way that kind of can't help but invoke the question in you of like, what does it mean that he's doing content like this? And a lot of his stuff is also just like, I don't know, basic reality TV bullshit. He's been accused of faking and staging some of this stuff. He's been accused of different types of malpractice or sets being unsafe, people not being treated very well. And I think that is essentially the problem with Mr. Beast in my view. Me personally, I don't care that much about the idea of like doing something charitable on camera. If you're doing the charitable thing, is it a little gross to show yourself doing that? Yeah, sure it is. And obviously you shouldn't film anybody that doesn't want to be filmed or doesn't have the ability to make that choice. But I don't know. I do think the charitable act is the more important part. And I also think there's an argument to be made in our current society that you can encourage people to think that way more and do things like that more often if you show it to them. I think we're increasingly becoming a culture of people who are constantly being showed different examples of how people behave through video content. And so I think if people are getting persuasive imagery of Mr. Beast giving lots of money away to people, I suppose it's just kind of a way for them to feel catharsis. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world. However, I do think that when it comes to Mr. Beast, what you have is this blind obsession with taking the basic YouTube format and building it into the biggest machine that he possibly can, doing these enormous projects and building this huge empire with food and snacks and Saudi Arabian theme parks and everything that you can imagine. And all of it just seems to be motivated purely by the idea that he can do it, that this YouTube vehicle and the viewership that comes with it is powerful enough that he can do all this stuff. He can build these enormous sets, throw huge amounts of money at it, see what happens on the other end. And he doesn't really seem to care about any of the scruples. He doesn't have any scruples at all. he has a sense that if you have millions, billions of dollars, it's good to give those to charitable causes. He supposedly said he's going to give all of his money away by the time he dies. So he has a sense of what the right things to do are. In many cases, his charities are exactly what the world needs, like reforestation and cleaning up the ocean. But he also has this, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make the biggest possible YouTube video that anyone's ever seen. And that really seems to be all that matters to him. And it emanates from him in this sort of soullessness that really only manifests itself as like a charismatic YouTube host. Outside of that, he seems kind of empty behind the eyes because that's all he cares about. So while it's good that he uses the YouTube machine as a way to funnel money into charitable causes, it also creates the problem that he is willing to break all kinds of ethical rules and do all kinds of things that are ethically dubious and take apparently all kinds of money that is blood-soaked in order to create the organization. And the main motivation is not the charity. He's not doing all this so he can give to charity. He's doing it because he's just obsessed with the idea of having the most successful YouTube channel. But he also recognizes that it's an absurd amount of money for one person to be pulling in. And so it only makes sense to funnel that into a bunch of other causes. And he's also figured out that if he turns himself doing that into content, it not only makes content that people will watch, but it also brands him as this super generous guy. But he genuinely doesn't care about anything that has to be done. The cost cutting, the use of non-union stagehands and technicians to build these sets, and dangerous conditions, people getting hurt, people going to the hospital, all kinds of weird arrangements, people getting left behind or not paid, and all of the different things that happen when you have a shady business that's gigantic and it keeps moving, and there's nothing that anyone could possibly do to address all of the concerns and externalities of a business of that size. That's the reality of capitalism. So Mr. Beast is just an unabashed capitalist, and he is willing to accept any controversy or externality in the process of his ultimate pursuit, which is to be a YouTube mega god, I guess. And so that's why I think I'm interested to see if this turns as controversial for Mr. Beast as it was for these comedians. Because on the part of the comedians, like I've said, they kind of created this expectation for themselves that they would be people who challenge those in power, even if they have a lot of money. And, you know, Bill Burr in particular just doesn't really seem to be grasping that he has partially branded himself as someone who critiques power. So when people see him taking money from the Saudi Arabian government, going out of his way to praise them instead of criticize them, and then lash out at his fans for calling him out for it, it all just amounts to a contradiction of what people trusted him for in the first place. So Mr. Beast doesn't run into that issue when it comes to this, because at this point everybody knows that he not only is generous with giving money to certain causes and doing things, but he also is an unabashed, almost psychopathic capitalist and has no scruples about it whatsoever. And this is a temporary park. Like I said, it's not permanent. He might have more deals like this in the future, but it's going to go away. It's a part of this temporary show that they're doing. But I think the scary part of it is if Mr. Beast in America is building these crazy games that are like violating people's safety, skirting laws that exist to protect people from things like that, because being a YouTuber is a weird space to exist in entertainment, and those are the kind of projects that, like I said, get around union rules and stuff like that because it's not going through the traditional pipelines of production. And so if even in America he's creating dangerous conditions on set, I'm terrified of what the arrangements might be for building these sets and creating this theme park, as well as the safety of going on these rides in general. And like I said, if something bad happens to somebody, or, you know, something dangerous happens, Mr. Beast is just gonna keep going. He just doesn't care. And I don't even think the charitable causes are a way to launder that. I think both things coexist at the same time in his brain. He's like, I'm gonna do whatever it takes to have the biggest money printing YouTube channel on the planet, and also I'm gonna try to give it as much of it away so that I don't feel like an evil person. I think that's pretty much the size of it. But I am a little bit fascinated with this model of creating almost an infinite amount of money and using that to fund causes. Because the reality of these different causes, nonprofits, and other organizations is that it takes a lot of money. And that's the hardest part about doing something like that, is you're still beholden to the sources of where your money comes from. And since what you're doing is not profitable, it's not turning a profit, you're constantly having to seek sources that are willing to put money into what you're doing. And so the idea of having a machine that has access to this like absurd amount of profit, the way that really popular content does, and then using that to continuously fund different vehicles that are, aimed at cleaning up the environment and things like that. I think that there's something about that is potentially sustainable. It only works as well as it does with Mr. Beast because he's willing to do all the fucked up shit up front. He's willing to deal with all the problems of creating content like that in the first place, and creating a machine like that in the first place in order to get to the part where he has all the money to play with. But I also think that, in the case of content creators who, have big shows and pull in a lot of money because of that, it's something to consider that by dedicating a certain amount to a certain cause consistently, that is sort of a continuous amount of money that can go towards that cause, which is very valuable. It's different than just like a lump sum of millions of dollars, which is great. And even having a continuous source of less money still has its downsides. Even in the case of the Riyadh Comedy Festival, some of the comedians that offered to give away some of that money to Human Rights Watch because they felt bad and didn't want it to hurt their reputation, Human Rights Watch couldn't even accept that money because it came from the Saudi Arabian government. So even the fact that it was coming through these comedians and they had criticized those comedians over them taking that money, it would risk looking like they were compromised for them to take that money. That's the level of carefulness that they are about where they take money from. So those kind of considerations come in when it comes to these nonprofits as well. And I think Mr. Beast is ultimately too apolitical of a figure to ever have too much of an impact, despite the fact that what he's doing is good. But the model of being a lucrative content creator that is redirecting some of your funds towards causes that frankly need that money in order to build themselves up will probably become an increasingly relevant model, as well as I think this idea of Saudi Arabia dumping money into creators and creative projects to try to lure them to Saudi Arabia is probably going to become an increasingly relevant thing. These comedians probably underestimated the extent to which they were on the precipice of kind of a new chapter in the world entertainment industry, where Saudi Arabia is wanting to be more responsible for more of those creative projects without taking accountability for the things that they've done in the past and continue to do. So I guess I'll see you guys at Beastland. Pressure getting pressed, do you feel it now? What even happens next, I don't really know. Voice carries less, can you hear me now? Soon as I get blessed, time's running out. Pressure getting pressed. Pressure getting pressed. Feel the pressure getting pressed. Yeah. Pressure, do you feel it now? I'm just saying this.